You're listening to the Business Communicators, presented by IABC Houston.
The last thing that I do want to mention, and I put this in the show notes, hope you guys had a chance to look at it. If not, that's fine. Quibi. It's a company that was started this year, and they were supposed to be, for those that aren't familiar, a streaming service that was going to revolutionize the way that we consume content. And they had this really cool concept that everything was filmed both vertically and horizontally. And, their whole mindset was, we realized that people are on their mobile devices. That's how they consume content. We're going to change the game, and we're going to put, instead of TV episodes, we're going to do like series on this platform, and they're going to be 7 to 10 minutes long. So Quibi, they were backed by $1.8 billion from Hollywood studios and other investors, launched April 6th. They had this huge Super Bowl ad with like all these influencers hyping it up. I think Chrissy Teigen, John Legend. This past Wednesday, on October 21st, they said they were going to wind down its operations and start a process to sell its assets just 6 months after its launch. And they said, unfortunately, that the world has changed dramatically since Quibi's launch, and our standalone business model is no longer viable. That was Jeffrey Katzenberg said in a statement. They only had $3.3 million in subscriptions. So they had a free trial. People weren't satisfied with the content, and they weren't renewing. I mean, it's just insane how quickly it fell. And they tried to blame COVID-19 and saying that people were no longer streaming and people weren't consuming content like that. I'm gonna call BS on that.
People aren't streaming. That's why Netflix is like breaking records in their stock prices. Yeah,
that's why TikTok is the number one app on the App Store, despite
or even Hulu. Come on,
exactly.
Yeah,
they had a lot of competition up against them. Even if you think about the name of it, Quibi.
Yeah,
would you want to watch Quibi? No, it's not sexy.
But even beside the name, like, I think the most important thing is content is king. If it's good content, people will pay for it. Yes. I have no problems paying for Netflix every month. Apple TV, I love the shows that are on there. It's not as deep of a library as something like Netflix, but the writing is incredible. The shows are so good.
Amazon Prime and Hulu the same way.
Yeah, it's like I might not like all platforms, but if you are going to come out there, you've got to differentiate yourself, right? I mean, YouTube is proven. David Dobrik, he shows that 4 to 5 minute videos do work. People watch. He posted a video this past week hyping up Bull Rat. Sacha Baron Cohen was on his channel as Bull Rat meeting his friends, and it's the number one trending video on YouTube right now. People are watching that, and now they're getting hyped for the movie. So it's like, there is a place for this. And I think the idea of vertical and horizontal shooting, it's a brilliant idea, but execution just failed, Thomas.
I want to figure out what they did with $1.8 billion in 6 months, in all honesty. That's a lot of money to spend and not a lot of time. But you hit it on the head. Content is king. Content is king. Content is king. If you build it, they will come. There's a reason Disney Plus paid $72 million for the rights to Hamilton over 4th of July weekend. Not to mention their deep library of having a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm very, very in tune with Disney Plus. Their deep level of content there. But the competition was there. They didn't make a big enough splash to warrant playing in the pool. They were trying to play big boy poker on the $5 tables.
Do you play big boy poker on the $5 tables? I don't.
I don't even know how to play poker. I'm always at the nickel and quarter slot machines. That's Hattie.
Well, but what I mean by that is the ante. The ante is.
I
huge,
hear you.
And they didn't have and while $1.8 billion should be a big enough ante to get what they want, it wasn't big enough to make a dent into the Hulus and to the Disneys and into the Netflix and the Amazon Primes. And you're talking Borat, isn't that going straight from not even going into theaters, and Amazon Prime is going to release it, and if you're a member of Amazon Prime, you get to watch it for free.
And that's a lot of movies that you're speaking of. And what's really interesting for me is that on Netflix, while they even have a lot of original programming, I have been taken back to the old school sitcoms that have always captured my attention. And Netflix is really, they know their audience. They know what we want to see. And that's the other part. They pay attention to what we're watching, and then they go out, they'll create something original that they know we're going to pick up on because they know our taste and what we do. And that's what's really good about some of these different, streaming services that they're paying attention to. They do a lot of good research, and maybe Quibi didn't do good research. And if they did do any type of research, it fell flat.
Yeah, I do think that is going to be interesting. Thomas, something that I wanted to pick up on that you said was, Hamilton going over to Disney Plus. That's going to be the future, like streaming. Hollywood has been hesitant to embrace it, and I get it because they have all these big budget films. But with COVID-19 changing, I mean, we're seeing movie theaters that are still not opening, movie theaters that are opening that people aren't going to the box office. Christopher Nolan put out a film, Tenet, this year, super, super hyped. A lot of people were interested in seeing it. Globally, they've only made $280 million. I say only $280 million, but it was a $200+ million budget. Had COVID-19 not happened, this would have probably been a $1 billion film, which is just incredible. And then you look at like Apple TV trying to take advantage of it by, having Tom Hanks, his last film, Greyhound, cinematography wise, it was just phenomenal. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how these platforms continue to pivot, continue to put out great content. Quibi had a chance, and we've seen that short form content works. It works on TikTok. It works on YouTube. They've been able to monetize it. Quibi failed.
Yep.
Yes, and I think Netflix, some of those unwritten stories of Netflix is when they were starting out, it was you have a TV idea, you pitch to Netflix, and they're just throwing money at you. All right, we'll figure it out later. Whether it works or not. And I think they're starting to swing back the other way to where, okay, this is content that we want. There still are some bombs on Netflix. I'm going to call Austin out because he recommended me watch a barbecue competition show, and it didn't even have a single Texan.
It did not have. Okay, to be fair, I have to defend myself. Thomas likes barbecue. He's a pit master himself. And I saw this on Netflix, cooking competitions. I love cooking shows. And I started watching it. I was like 5 minutes in, and I take a picture, and they were like just introducing everyone. I take a picture, I send it to Thomas, and I was like, found a new show for you. Well, after they introduced everyone, I realized nobody's from Texas. I'm like, how can you have a barbecue show and not have someone from Texas on it? I think they had like 10 contestants. It's like, that's how you fail. And that was like the number one thing that people were critiquing. It's like, if you want barbecue, you've got to have Texas represented. You've got to have Kansas City. You've got to have the Carolinas. Those are the essentials.
And I'm just giving him a hard time because I think I was about 5 minutes into the show, and I texted him. I'm like, what is this thing you recommending? He's like, it just came on. So I gave it about another 10 minutes. I'm like, that is probably the worst cooking show I've ever seen.
I failed, Thomas.
And he's like, yeah, my defense, I recommended it right off the start. And I was like, I can see why you recommended it. Just not good.
All right. So to close this out and talk a little bit to close out the streaming conversations and to close out the podcast, I'm going to put it on the spot for you guys. What is one series or show that people should be watching right now, and what platform should they be watching it on?
I think since we're a business communications platform and education is king, how we can educate ourselves as much as possible. I think people should really, really look at The Social Dilemma and then follow that up with The Great Hack, because that kind of gives you a little more insight into how these big tech companies that are free are operating on just how the ads are being placed and how the political campaigns are being launched and how everything's going from there. Part of me is a nerd that I like that style of theater. Not everything in there is accurate, but it at least starts the conversation. So that's probably what I'd recommend, and both of those are on Netflix.
Great show. And then actually Professor David Carroll, who was featured in The Great Hack, appeared on season 1 of this very same podcast. So if you want to check that out, find it on iTunes, Spotify. We talk about The Great Hack. Hattie, what are you watching? What platform is it on?
I'm watching Netflix. I really like the movies, so I'm going to be very honest. I'm into different. I just finished watching, I don't know, actually I finished watching a series called Emily in Paris. And
that's a whole nother podcast.
But I really love the show because the young lady actually works for a firm that is in, marketing and advertising. And she's an American, and she ends up moving to Paris to work at the Paris branch. And they don't like her ideas. They don't like anything she has to say. And above all, she can't even speak French. So why are you here? But it's a really good series. But Netflix is my platform every single day.
I love me some Netflix. I'm always trying to find something new. There are a few shows that I'm watching on there now that are really good. I did watch Emily in Paris. I think my biggest beef is how they treated cast iron skillets. Just not doing it right. So there were a lot of people that were upset with some things in that series. I thought it was enjoyable. It's a quick watch. It's not something that you have to get totally invested in. But if there's one series that I'm recommending. 2020 has sucked, guys. I mean, let's be honest. It's not been the best year. We need positivity. That's something that we need. Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso is on Apple TV. If you're not familiar with it, I think it was 2014, 2015 when NBC actually had the broadcasting rights to the English Premier League. Jason Sudeikis portrayed this character called Ted Lasso, who was an American football coach going over to the EPL to coach the Tottenham Hotspurs. And it was a hilarious clip on NBC, went viral. And this year, Apple TV bought the rights to that story. And it is probably one of the funniest shows that I've seen in a long time. I think it's like 10 episodes. It's very feel good, very positive. The humor in there, the references are just brilliant. So if you're watching one thing this weekend or whenever you listen to this podcast, watch Ted Lasso. That's my take.
It's interesting before we wrap up, something that I'm following closely is I feel like 2020 is the constant, oh, you think it's bad now, or, oh, you think that's breaking news, watch this. This week, with the Department of Justice actually filing charges against Google for monopolistic behaviors. And so it's still too early to really understand what's going on, but it's something that I think is just interesting as we sit here and we talk technology and how Quibi didn't make a dent into groups that are almost becoming monopolistic there.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram @BizCommunicator and find out more about our chapter at iabchouston.com. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.